Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Kilayim, chapter 2, Halacha 2 in the Art Scroll 13a1. It's a pretty short Mishnah, pretty short Halacha, and Rabbi Yossi's point from chapter 2, Halacha 1 comes back in here as an implication. So, the Mishnah is talking about the law when somebody already planted a field, and then they change their mind, and then they want to plant a different kind of grain. Let's say they planted it with wheat, and now they change their mind, they want to plant it with barley. What are you going to do? It's already in the ground. Well, if you go ahead and you just go throw the barley in that you want, and you already have wheat in there, now you've planted Kilayim. Now you have two different species. So you really can't do that. What are you going to do? Now, Halacha 2 and Halacha 3 are going to be very similar. Halacha 3 is going to be, what happens if you planted something like wheat and now you change your mind and you want to plant a vineyard in the same space? Well, we know that you can't plant grain and vineyards within a certain amount of area, let alone within the same area. The rules for the vineyard, as we're going to be seeing in Halacha 3, is going to be more strict than what we see here if you change your mind with the seeds, these kinds of seeds. So Halacha 2 is going to be a case of Kilayim, where you've changed your mind and you want to exchange one kind of seed for another when you're planting it. And Halacha 2 is going to be Kilayim, where you've planted it with wheat and you change your mind, now you want to be planting it with a vineyard, and that's going to be more strict. And basically this is setting up to teach us that the rules for planting grain next to a vineyard is always going to be regarded as more strict. Now, the Mishnah says if the field was planted with wheat and he reconsidered and decided to plant it with barley, he must wait for the field until the wheat germinates, and then he has to turn the soil and destroy the germinated wheat seeds, and afterward he may plant the barley. Now, in Halacha 3 that's going to be coming up, it's going to be more strict. He can't even wait till it germinates. He just has to plow it through. And one of the ideas that's going to be coming up in the Gemara is when you're plowing it, either way, how big are the furrows? How much plowing do you have to do? How thorough do you have to be to get rid of this? So the Mishnah continues and says if it's sprouted, in other words, if the wheat has already broken the ground, he cannot say, I will plant the barley and afterward turn the soil. Rather, he must first turn the soil and afterward plant. So the farmer prefers to first sow the barley and then turn over the land. And in this way, the plowing used to destroy the wheat is going to serve to cover the barley. But this is prohibited by the Mishnah either on biblical grounds, since he is now sowing two species together, says the Chazan Ish, albeit with the intention to subsequently destroy the wheat. Or perhaps it's going to be a rabbinic violation because the planting gives the appearance of planting Kilayim. But the idea here is that there may be a concern that in the end he will not fulfill his resolution to destroy the wheat. In other words, maybe he just won't care about it and he'll just leave the field as is. So at first glance, it's not clear why this ruling is formulated as if it's limited to the case where the wheat has already sprouted. After all, the law should also apply for wheat that's germinated but not yet broken through the ground. But here, this is talking about where wheat has already broken through the ground. And the Ravaz says about this that although the law obviously applies even to the first situation mentioned in the Mishnah, where the wheat didn't come out over the ground yet, the Mishnah wishes to emphasize that this law applies even when the wheat is already visible and has just begun to grow. And since the wheat is already visible and not easily overlooked, you might have thought that the farmer could be allowed to delay the planting of the wheat until after he's sown the barley. And then, but really the idea is that he says, okay, the wheat's already sprouted. Now I want to get rid of the wheat. What am I going to do? Well, I got to plant the barley. And so why should I plow twice, right? I'm going to plow it to destroy the wheat. Now I got to go plow it to go plant the barley. Well, let me just save it. I'm just going to go do it all at the same time. So I'm going to plow it, and while I'm plowing over the wheat, I'm planting the furrows. The plowing is going to create furrows for me to plant the barley. And so, you're basically doing one plowing instead of two plowings. Well, that's not going to be allowed. The Mishnah defines how thoroughly the soil has to be turned. Gemara says, how thoroughly must he plow? And it says, like furrows of the rain. What are going to be furrows of the rain? Well, the plowing of the wheat field in order to permit replanting it with barley is basically saying that he does not need to turn over the entire surface of the field. And as long as the furrows are spaced at intervals no greater than the furrows of rain, it's sufficient that the barley can be planted. And the Rambam is basically saying that after the first rain, the fields were plowed with broadly spaced furrows. And the pattern created by the furrow is known as furrows of rain. So that's where we get this from. And there's another lenient ruling, and Abba Shaul is going to be even more lenient than that. I would have thought it would be very, very tight furrows that overturns everything. And they're saying, no, it's going to be much more light than that. What are going to be furrows of rain? This is going to be just to break up the ground. And it's very, like the plowing tools are set to be very wide. And it's not like an intensive plowing like you're going to be planting a field of barley or something. So there's an initial ruling that's even more lenient. It says, Abba Shaul says, it's enough that he plows so that there will not remain a bet rova per bet sa'ah of unturned soil. In other words, he does not even need to plow the entire field. We just learned that nullification comes in 1/24. In other words, if you're planting grain and you have one rova, that's going to be 4.16%, and you have, the other 23 parts is going to make up the bet sa'ah. A bet sa'ah is made up of 24 rovaim. Basically, what this is saying is that just under the rova, you end up nullifying for the sa'ah of seed. And what Abba Shaul is saying is that the law of nullification is going to apply, so that, let's say you've plowed just over 23 parts of the bet sa'ah of land, and you've left over 120, just a little bit less than 1/24 of the amount, and now you're going to plant in the entire amount. Well, basically what they're saying is that this mixture is basically going to be allowed because it's been nullified. That's a big hiddush. It's a very clever idea. Accordingly, Abba Shaul, according to the Chazan Ish, is saying that not only may the plowing be done at a relatively loose way like the furrows of the rain, but one is not obligated to plow the entire field, and the total area of the bet rova can be left unplowed. That's a big hiddush. So he's really saying that the nullification really is nullification. That's the key point. The Gemara is short, and it's going to say how long does it take until it germinates, and until it's been in the earth for 3 days. And this applies only when wheat was planted in a place where it has some moist earth. The Gemara says, however, it does not apply in a place with dry earth. This type of earth requires more time for the wheat to germinate. Now, the question is, why is this talking about how long does it take to germinate? Well, what happens if it's been, kind of wet earth, and it's been there for more than 3 days and you don't see any germination? Well, you can assume that the seed is dead or spoiled seed, and that it's never going to germinate. It's just sat in the moist ground and it rotted, right? You can assume that it's dead. So that's why this is talking about that. And, what do you do then if you've planted it after 3 days and nothing happens, and it's 4 days and you don't see anything? Are you going to be forbidden to go ahead and plant this? The idea is that it's bringing this up because if it's going to be moist earth, well, it's nullified seed. It's been rotting in the ground. So you can, you're not mixing seed. It counts as being dead. So you can go ahead and plant the barley and not worry about it. That's why this is here. A brisa is teaching the distinction between moist and dry fields. And we were similarly taught in a brisa regarding the 3 days one must wait to after planting the wheat. And the brisa teaches 3 qualifications for the rule. It says a part of a third day is equivalent to a whole day. And that, by the way, is basically going to be the same in halacha. In halacha, a partial day is always counted as a whole day. So that means that you don't have to wait 3 full days, that when the wheat can be expected to have germinated, even if part of the third day is passed, you can count it as a third day. And the next part is that the limit of the 3 days applies only when the wheat is planted in a place with moist earth, and this is affirming the Gemara's statement. And it says if the wheat field sprouted and he brought his animal into the field and it grazed on the sprouts, the field is now permissible for sowing another kind of seed. So basically they're saying, well, what happens if it's been growing for 3 days, even 4 days? The sprouts are there, you see it. And now you brought your goats in, and the goats come and they eat there. Basically, a lot of the kinds of species like goats will rip up the entire root, not just the part that sprouted, but rip and unroot the whole thing and eat it. And so basically what this is saying is that you can assume that it's been removed and it's like as if it's been plowed, and now you can go plant the other seed. That's teaching a chiddush that we wouldn't have known, but we do need to know because people might do this. So the Mishnah teaches how much must he plow? In other words, what's going to be the issue here? And the Gemara says, what is the reasoning of this ruling of the rabbis? And since his mind is to plow the field, the wheat becomes insignificant even if he did not plow it uninterruptedly. In other words, even if you didn't make the spacing very, very tight, everybody sees this guy plowing the field. So is there a Mar Zion issue? No. They saw him planting the wheat. Now they see him plowing. Well, it's clear that he doesn't want this wheat. He's changed his mind. So you see a visible thing of him doing bitul. He's doing nullification of it. So even though the spacing isn't as wide, you still see a nullification. And that's going to be a key thing. Now there's a related brisa. And it said that we were taught in a brisa, Abba Shaul says, we are not obligated for him to plow narrowly. Rather, he may plow like the furrows of the rain. So this is basically a leniency that's being taught in the Mishnah. That in the Mishnah is an anonymous opinion of the Tanakama. And the brisa that's being taught here by the brisa is indicating that Abba Shaul agrees with the Tanakama that the spacing of the furrows can be done like the furrows of the rain. This is not saying that he's the author of this. This is basically saying the Tanakama say that and he agrees with it because he goes one step further, right? And the Chazan Ish is going to be saying about this that Abba Shaul agrees with the Tanakama that the spacing of the furrows can be done like the furrows of the rain and doesn't need to be done tightly. So the Bryce is going to elaborate, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says that this pattern of plowing is called a horsetail, in which the furrows are spaced so that the edge of the displaced earth of this furrow touches the displaced earth of that furrow, and the edge of the displaced earth of this furrow touches the displaced earth of that furrow. In other words, the furrows are separated such that the mound that gets produced by upturning this earth is going to be one furrow that touches the other mound, one next to the other, so that the soil under the mound of earth on both sides is going to be where if you had seeds that are planted there on this unturned soil, it's going to be unaffected by the plowing. And they're going to say that this pattern represents a horsetail. Abba Shaul, again, is going to go further, and he's going to say that one need not plow the entire field as long as a bet rova is left unplowed. So basically, you can do this loose formation that the Tanakama is saying, but he says that you don't even need to do the whole bet rova of land. You can do 23 out of 24 parts. So you can leave this one bet rova of land undone. Why? Because 1/24 is going to be the amount for nullification. And he's really going to be strict, saying, no, this is really nullified. So, and if it means it's nullified even here in the field. In the case of trying to mix it to plant it, it's still nullified. So the Gemara says, what is the reason of the ruling of Abba Shaul? Since he started to plow part of the remaining bet rova, it's going to be sufficient. It's enough. And the idea is, since he plowed the rest of the field, and Mara Fulda says, and he started plowing the last bet rova as well, it's considered as if he's completed the plowing of the entire field. But again, the idea is that you've already demonstrated that the owner visibly is not interested in it, and he's basically holding that you don't need to plow the entire field. Even part of the field is going to be considered as if the entire field isn't plowed. And certainly it's clear that the owner is not interested in any part of the wheat, first of all. And second of all, he's basically saying that the seeds are nullified. So the Gemara is going to say that what is it that Abba Shaul is proposing here? And Abba Shaul is following the stringent ruling of Rabbi Yossi in the previous Mishnah, who requires the removal of the entire rova of foreign seed. So, that's a question, right? Rabbi Yossi says that if you have a mixture that's greater than 1/24th, it looks like you have to remove all of that amount. And the Gemara says here, Abba Shaul is ruling in accordance with the rabbis of the Mishnah and ruling that, in fact, you can leave over less than a bet rova being unplowed. In other words, he's saying that it's really going to be nullified. And the rabbis are contending that the foreign seed does not need to be removed entirely. And Rabbi Yossi says it has to be removed entirely. So Rabbi Yossi would be saying that you have to plow the entire field. And Abba Shaul says, no, you don't need to remove the entire seed if you didn't plant this yet. You can leave a little bit left over. You can have a little bit of the seed there. So if you have 5% of the seed, and according to Rabbi Yossi, he's saying that you have to remove 5% of the seed. That's going to be more than 1/24th, right? 1/24th is 4.16%. So Rabbi Yossi is going to be saying that you have to remove all of it. And the Rabbi Abba Shaul is basically saying that no, even if you have, say, 2% of it, you remove 3% of it, you have 2% of it left, so it's 98% of what you want, and it's 2% mix, it counts as nullified. You don't need to remove all the extra 2%. Rabbi Yossi would be saying, because you have to remove all of it, you also over here in the plowing have to plow all of it. And Abba Shaul says, not only do you not have to remove all of it before you planted it, but over here you don't even need to plow all of it. You can leave 1/24th part unplowed. So the Gemara is going to summarize these three opinions regarding how thoroughly the field has to be plowed. And the Tanna Kama of the Mishnah is saying a lenient ruling. It says once he set his mind to plow the field, even if he did not plow it uninterruptedly, he may sow the barley. In other words, they're basically saying that, first of all, you have to the Tanna Kama is saying you visually have to show everybody that you've nullified it. You have to plow the whole field, and then you can plant it. Abba Shaul gives an additional leniency. He's saying once he started to plow part of the remaining bet rova that's left over, in other words, he's done, say, 23 and a half rovaim. There's 24 rovaim for a bet sa'ah. He's done almost all of it, but one part's left over, and it's a little bit more, and it's going to be like as if you've nullified 1/24th of the seed here, and in actuality, when you're doing this and you're trying to replant, it's still going to be nullified. And he's saying that it's enough. He says in this Gemara it's sufficient. Rabbi Yossi has the third opinion, and he's saying that the entire bet rova must be completely plowed. And the others are understanding, like Rabbi Kanievsky's understanding about this, that Abba Shaul is differing with the Tanna Kama and ruling that the spacing of the furrows, like spacing of the rain, is not enough because it leaves more than a bet rova of unturned soil per bet sa'ah. So he's saying that not only do you have to plow the entire field, but the spacing of the plowing needs to be tighter so that really there's nothing left over. And that is going to finish up Halacha 2. Halacha 3 is going to be more strict, and it's going to be with planting vineyards and grain seeds together. Have a great day.